Hi guys, how we doing? We're very, very honoured today to have Louise Finlayson come in and speak to us about general mindset around our training, around our performance, and around any business aspects that you guys may have surrounding COVID-19. I'm going to get Louise to introduce herself, give a bit of background, and we can take it from there. So Louise, thank you so much for joining us. Introduce yourself to the masses.
All right, thank you. And thank you for having me on. Looking forward to doing this. So my background is primarily in business psychology and then sort of more recently in performance psychology. So do a lot of work basically in kind of business leaders, teams, and sports teams and athletes, kind of on all aspects of how to develop performance. So that's it in a kind of nutshell.
Yeah. Do you want to go a little bit deeper into the performance aspects to do with the sport?
In terms of type of work or?
Type of work, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So at the moment do a mix, so a lot of sort of individual work with athletes, and that can cover a variety of different things. So it can be, for some athletes, it's around kind of juggling lifestyle and the pressures of working in performance sport, or it could be about how they, simple things like goal setting, and also how they kind of manage pressure and that kind of thing. So really whatever is going on for them that kind of impacts their performance on a one-to-one basis. From a team perspective, team dynamics, and how teams get to understand each other, how they get to work sort of more effectively as a unit, and that type of thing. So yeah, bit of a mixture. Very much depends on the individual and the team I'm working with.
And that's really cool because you must also notice a crossover with the team performance aspects into the business environment as well. Just because it's part of a team, it's a team within an organization. Across the board, it can be quite general, or do you really kind of separate it as well?
It's funny actually because there's so much crossover, even with individual stuff that I do, whether it's a kind of individual athlete I'm working with or somebody in a business. At the end of the day, performance challenges will happen in whatever regard that is. The psychology that underpins that kind of stuff doesn't change massively. It's more the context in which you're applying it. So you do see a lot of similarities, but there's also a lot each discipline can learn from the other. So it's fun to work with.
I know it sounds really interesting. It sounds kind of like a little part of my job is to also touch on elements of psychology within clients and within the groups I do as well. I kind of probably Edinburgh's cheapest therapist at the moment, but
the cool thing is you'll definitely get that in your work. It's kind of so much of it is actually stuff that we're doing subconsciously anyway.
Yeah, I think it's, for me, it's on an entry level. It's asking how somebody's doing, how their lifestyle is affecting their current training, their current mood as well. I think it's important to have an understanding as a coach, especially what's hindering or what's detrimental to their success, as in their goals that they've set and explained to me at the beginning. If we can kind of get that on track and good to go, then the chances of them achieving their goals are going to be a lot higher than what they would have been if they didn't address those issues in the first place.
Yeah, definitely.
Awesome. Cool. So obviously we're in the middle of something wild right now, something that's never been experienced before by anybody, pretty much, who's probably watching this. If you were to give some general kind of guidance on how to kind of understand your mindset, and control kind of your thoughts, your feelings around your training, around kind of what somebody potentially needs to do to ensure that they're staying on track with their training, and any other forms of nuggets that you think would be beneficial for those guys around general mindset to hit up. So kind of 3 questions in one there.
Sure. I'll hopefully try and answer them all. So I think one of the things that I'm probably finding myself talking to people most frequently about at the moment is routine and structure. Mm-hmm. So I think that's been made obviously a lot more challenging by the current situation we're in. And actually as humans, we kind of crave it. And if we don't have it, that's when things can start to go a little bit off track. And I know it sounds really simple and really obvious, but I'm speaking to people about both in sport and business. It's about how do you start to implement that. It'll look slightly different now, but definitely creating that routine, that structure. And the other thing that I'm finding a lot of is talking about goals with people, but it's actually how do they reframe them in this context? Because we'll have all had sort of certain things that we were working towards with an expectation. I know, for example, you've got your Ironman you're working towards, but it's how do you start to reframe that in the current context to almost break that down into something that is manageable and kind of more predictable at the moment, whilst not losing sight of the bigger goal, but just creating some other ways to sort of create that feeling of ongoing achievement as you're going through. I think that's really important. I've totally forgotten the original question now.
3 questions in a row.
That's all right.
Okay, well, based on that point, I think kind of the restructuring of goals are incredibly important, because we are in a situation where it's no longer essentially a linear path. A lot of people think goal setting is linear, and don't necessarily see any kind of hurdles that may come across on that journey. However, now we've got one of the biggest hurdles that we've ever experienced to try and overcome how we're currently feeling about our long-term goal. So I think routine and structure are key, and it's something that I speak about to the majority of my clients. Anybody who's wanting any advice to do with their goals and who come to me is all about routine and structure. And that can be anything from kind of bedtime routines, sleep hygiene, morning routines, kind of booking yourself in first. Is that something that you would do to kind of your clients or your athletes as well? Would you set up some structure like that within their day, or how would...
Yeah, and it's whatever works for individuals. It might look slightly different depending on who it is, but certainly the more routine that you can get, and almost try and, even the simple things, I know it sounds really silly, but kind of getting up and getting showered and getting dressed as though you're going to work, but using that commute time for whether that's when you fit in your training, or whether that's when you fit in a bit of, whether it's mindfulness meditation or yoga or something, actually kind of, but creating that structure and having that planned, at least the night before, if not kind of having your plan for the week, depending on kind of the way you prefer to operate. But almost just kind of chunking down the days of the weeks so that you kind of know what you're ticking off as you go.
Yeah, I think, again, it's like a mini to-do list, isn't it, for us, for our brains to kind of absorb. I structure it in ways in which it's kind of blocked off in, depends how big the job is, essentially. If it's an hour and a half training session, I know that's blocked off in my diary. And anything pre or post that is kind of a bit of free time, especially if I'm training in the morning. But generally my mornings are the same, right throughout the week, Monday to Sunday. I'll get up roughly about the same time. I'll always go for my shower first thing. I'll do my hair like I've done today, otherwise I'll wear a hat. But it's important things to feel good, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's important.
What's your routine like throughout the week?
So I am sorry.
At present, because it's
at present. Yeah. So pretty much the way things are, just because of the nature of my work at the moment, the days are actually quite busy. So I guess I'm potentially quite lucky in that respect, that I've got a lot of people to be checking in with and a lot of stuff to be doing. So my days are almost planned at the moment, hour by hour. But for me, the toughest part comes from kind of actually how do I sort of maintain some level of routine at the end of the day and have that cut-off time. So that's the bit that is important, I think, as well. It's, the focus, I think, can sometimes be on structuring the working day, but actually when we've got all this free time in the evening as well, are there certain things, how do you factor in time to do something that you really enjoy, or something that's kind of good for your mindset, whatever that might look like for you? I think it's kind of remembering to take in the whole picture of that. I know some people that I work with don't like that. They don't like to have the hour by hour, and that's totally fine. But actually, what are the 3 things then that you want to accomplish that day, and almost set that from your to-do list? What are the 3 most important, and have them written out the night before, and then you've done that. You'll probably end up doing more, but got that in place.
Are you a big task tackler first, or are you a type of person who gets the mini wins in to then attack that big task?
I am. So I sometimes talk to people about when comes to sort of time management type stuff, it's knowing yourself, it's knowing when your energy levels are at their peak. So you've got kind of, it's going to sound really silly, I know you're going to laugh at this, but you've got your larks, who are your kind of people who are kind of morning people, who that's when they've got their peak of energy. Or you've got people who sort of maybe peak in the middle of the day, so they're often referred to as hummingbirds.
Oh, really? Okay.
Don't ask me why. And then in the evening, people who sort of tend to work better sort of in the hours later in the day, kind of your owls. So I guess partly knowing where your energy level sits. Yeah. So I know for me, actually, I get more done in the morning. So I'll give bigger tasks, more complex tasks in that period of time. Because I know that's when I work best. And actually the more kind of simple, I guess, routine stuff for the middle of the day, because I know that's when my energy flags.
Yeah.
So it's kind of knowing yourself and kind of working around that, rather than trying to follow someone else's structure, I think that is part of the advantage of the time we're in at the moment.
Yeah, it definitely allows us to find out who we are in terms of working, because everybody is now working from home unless you are an essential worker. And people who may not ever worked from home before are now put into a position where it's just like, what am I? Where do I fit in those three kind of categories you've just described? I know myself, I'm a lark. I'm first thing in the morning. Definitely around the 3 p.m. time, I'm slumping. I'm in a terrible place. Motivation is low, so I'll go out for a walk. That's when I'll take the dog out for a walk and just kind of recalibrate and realign for the next hour and a half of potential work to do. But I think you're right. Being self-employed, like you and I both are, is hard because it's factoring fun. We have to factor that in, and it's very easy not to, because you're trying to focus on everybody else other than yourself. And it's only when somebody calls you out on it. When was the last time that you laughed, with purpose? Or when was the last time you actually did something that was for yourself?
Yeah.
That moment of like, oh wow, maybe we're preaching it the whole time, but it's always good to kind of practice it as well, to speak from a place where we have, especially for me, where I have been. I find it quite hard to kind of separate my personal life and my work life. It's all kind of combined, especially at the moment, because there's so much going on.
Yeah, exactly. And that's where it comes, it's the discipline of being able to know when to switch off. And actually, if you've got people that can call you out on it, all the better, because actually, again, as humans, we need that kind of contact. We need other people to hold us accountable sometimes. And I think that's really important. And I think as well, sometimes where possible, if you can kind of keep that workspace separate from your living space, to almost have that segregation, you can shut the door and work. I know that's not possible for everyone in their setup, but if there are some ways of kind of creating that area of separation, then that helps hugely as well.
Yeah. There'll be a lot of people watching this as well who may be self-employed, who may be working in office spaces and environments, who are unfamiliar with those areas. Bit of general mindset around that, because we've spoken about sport, we've spoken about kind of performance and how we can make sure our training is locked into place. Is there anything different that you would add for potential office workers who find themselves in a completely different world from what they're used to?
I think a lot of the same stuff does apply. I know from people that I've been speaking to recently, again, who do sort of base themselves out of offices usually, I think the kind of, what I find people are tending to miss at the moment is that kind of informal interaction. Because so much of the day, if you work in an office, like if you go make a coffee, you'll have a chat with somebody in the kitchen, and I know people are missing that sort of interaction. So almost factoring that in as well, is there someone that you can sort of have that kind of coffee break with and do that? Because the danger is you just sit at your laptop all day and you kind of end up working more than you would normally in a day and not have those mental breaks. So I think that's one thing that I'm coming across quite a lot with people I'm speaking to just now.
And it's a fantastic point, actually, because it's something that I've never experienced. I've never worked in an office, so I don't know what it's like to have those office breaks. But speaking to a lot of people about it, it's almost becoming more productive working from home because they don't have those distractions of kind of coffee breaks and whatnot. Yes. As the day gets on, that's when they're finding themselves, they're needing that form of interaction where they can actually go, oh, what about that assignment that we had to do earlier on, for example? It's almost like that communication that's been stripped away from us.
Yeah, exactly. And it's the stuff about, talking about what's on TV the night before or whatever it was, the stuff that isn't work.
Yeah.
because we need those mental breaks as well, because you can't sustain the concentration for that long and still remain productive.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think I was putting proof in whatever the expression is on Friday night just there. So
Yeah, it's fine, because we'll probably have these bursts, and I know I'm seeing people, I think particularly in the first week of lockdown, there's been that kind of adrenaline rush of, I'm so productive, I'm going to get all of this stuff done.
yeah.
And now that everything's kind of sinking in and it's becoming more normal, I think people are starting to feel it a bit more now.
Yeah.
So it's thinking about the sustainability of what you're doing.
And I think, again, you've hit it there. I mean, especially when it comes to, from my point of view, especially when it comes to people's fitness levels, it's all about, oh, let's get those home workouts done, let's kind of build up a routine, let's kind of progress from here, here, and here. Well, we're now in a state of norm.
Yeah.
We were in what, essentially what you could class as a honeymoon period, where people were maybe using it as a bit of luxury when they're working from home, they've got their kids about, they're seeing their partners, their productivity at work may not be as high as what it was in the office. But now we know that we've got at least another week of lockdown.
Yeah.
Probably more. And we now have to adapt. We now have to adapt to the situation to ensure that we're not mentally losing our focus on our work, on our fitness, and most importantly, on our health. And that's kind of one of the reasons why I wanted to take you in and have a discussion like we're having right now, is to ensure that we put things in place for everybody. And because this could potentially go on for another 3 months in the same scenarios. And 3 months is a long time for people not to do anything in terms of their health and fitness, because that also has a positive effect on their mindset and approach to everything else in their life too.
Yeah, definitely.
Which I think leads us really nicely onto some goal setting. So I know this is kind of a strong point of yours, so I want you to go as deep as you want to go, right? For everybody. But in terms of goal setting, a lot of people, from my experience, are very good at writing down a goal. Everybody can do it. Everybody can think for 5 minutes and write down a goal. How do you action it?
Okay.
Go.
So, no pressure. So for me, there are different types of goals. I think that's the first thing, and I sort of alluded to a little bit earlier. I think most people tend to have a sort of an idea of what a big goal might be, or something kind of generally that they're working towards. And for me, that's what we'd sort of define as potentially an outcome goal. And that's the final thing, the thing that will tell you whether you've achieved that or not. But beneath that, I guess the best performances and the kind of elite athletes or sort of high performers will tend to have those broken down into what we would refer to as kind of process or performance goals.
Okay.
So process goals being about what's the actual skill or technique or whatever it is that you're learning, that you're trying to sort of acquire or get better at, that will then help you to achieve that goal, that kind of ultimate goal. And then you've got your performance goal, which is kind of measuring your progress against your own standards. So it's not about progress in comparison to other people. It's about, does that mean progressing, lifting a weight of whatever kilos to something else? How do you measure that you're progressing? And I know obviously the stuff that you do sort of within the app gives people a really good measure of that type of thing. And that's exactly what we would call kind of a performance goal. And so the key is to kind of have that big goal, but to be able to break it down into actually what are the technical things you need to do? What's the kind of what's the time frame? Can you be really specific about that? And also, who might you need to help you? Because that's the other thing. Where do you need to get resources from? And who or what will help hold you accountable to it? So there's lots of things. It can be quite it's quite complex. But I guess the reason if we can be more specific, it just directs our attention in a more specific and focused way. And because if it's too general, it's really hard to kind of stay focused on it and kind of keep momentum and keep motivation around it. So the more you can break it down into something sort of easy, sort of smaller chunks, the more likely that is that you'll actually get there.
I think it's really cool, and it's something that, from a coaching point of view for myself, it's something I always ask a client at the very beginning of their journey, like, what is your goal? and it's kind of good to get it down on paper. However, what I've basically taken this time to do over the last 2 weeks is kind of rebuild how I do everything. So now I have a 30-day goal, a 90-day goal, and a 365-day goal that I ask a client to sit down, and this is going out to absolutely everybody within my client academy, to then give me feedback so we can then make it achievable. And then the 30-day goal, I've actually broken that even further down into kind of an 8 to 9, I think it's an 8 to 10 step process. How are you physically going to achieve this goal?
Yeah.
Because I think if we write it down, I want to lose 10 pounds of body fat in 30 days, right? For example, how are you going to do that? Yes, you're going to kind of get the training for myself, get some nutritional advice, but then how are you actually going to implement that within your day?
Yeah.
And I think it's those kind of broken down sections that are going to help enable people, from my point of view, to achieve those. So it's almost kind of taking what you just said about your overall goal, a 30-day kind of goal, to make it more processed by adding those little steps in.
Exactly. And I think the other thing that I would add to that is when it comes to goal setting, for me, I feel it's important to always acknowledge the why as well.
Yeah.
So why are you working towards that specific goal? So is it something you really want to do, or is it something that you feel you should do? And I think that's sometimes quite an interesting, if you really kind of strip it back, if you're not clear on why you're doing it, you're not going to stick to it. And it's got to be something that's intrinsic within you that you really want to do.
Yeah.
And I think that's
it. I definitely ask people the 4 whys.
Yeah.
Right through it. Doesn't matter if it's a goal setting session or whatever it is. I always ask somebody why they're doing it. I'll just kind of randomly select a client and ask and speak to them that day. But it was from a book from Simon Sinek.
Yeah.
All About Why. You may have read it. And I thought it was brilliant. I thought it was really, really good to kind of get that understanding, because by the 4th why, that's when you really do find out the person's true meaning to why they want to start the goal in the first place.
Yeah.
Because I found, and you may be able to elaborate on this as to why, but
I like what you've done there.
That was intentional. But why do people give out a false why to begin with? So say you come to me, for example, and you'll say, oh, Callum, I want to look like X in a certain day. Okay. Why is that your first goal, for example? Why do people give like a false goal before they actually give the real goal? Is it insecurity? Is it confidence, self-esteem?
I think it'll depend on a lot of reasons. And actually, for a lot of people, they may not even realize that it may not be sort of a deliberate false goal, if you see what I mean. It may be a kind of, partly it could be a self-awareness thing, partly it can be a kind of, generally as people, we want to be liked, we don't want to be judged negatively. So it's a kind of, well, maybe this is what they want to hear. There's lots and lots of different reasons why people might do that. And it can sometimes be confidence, it can sometimes be that bit. So I guess the skill is in what you've just described, in terms of actually just drilling down into that a little bit more and kind of asking why. Yeah. And then asking why again, because that's really where you're going to get to the truth of it. So it may not be like a sort of deliberate false presentation, but sometimes we're conditioned, aren't we, by sort of our social setting and by what surrounds us.
I'll tell you why I brought that up. It's actually watching a documentary on Netflix by it's about Tony Robbins and how he goes about his kind of on-stage performances and whatnot.
Yeah.
And one of the members of the audience he randomly selected was a girl who's 19 years old, and he basically asked her what her goal was. You know, what did you want? Yeah. What do you want to achieve? And she's like, oh, I wanted to achieve a certain physique by the age of 21. I want to ensure that my nutrition's on point so I can achieve that goal. Then he turned around to her and said, well, why? What's that got to do with anything? What's that got to do with your life? You're 19 years old. Like right now, there's nothing on you for a start. And eventually what happened was, it's fascinating. He actually this girl had a nutritional aesthetics goal. But the real reason that she said that was because she wanted to be liked, she wanted to be loved, But then the true root of that was she never got the love from her father when she was younger.
Yeah.
What? So she's gone from now going, oh, I want to look like this by I'm 21, to it's because I didn't feel loved and I want somebody to love me. I was like, my mind was blown. He probed so hard to find the true reason. You know, that you can take it as far as you need. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's, Joe, I could go off on a whole different tangent with this. Because so much, I guess, of our self-perception, our kind of, I talk a lot about core beliefs, and where a lot of our core beliefs have come from have been often how we've been shaped as we've grown up, and what are the kind of situations we've been through, that almost give us that script that we've sort of developed over time about who we are and what it means to get other people's respect, love, whatever it is, and that can really shape how we view things. So it's a completely different tangent.
Let's do another one of these.
But there's also, I'd say, it also probably exercise a little bit of caution in digging too deep with that, because sometimes actually opening up something that people are maybe ready to deal with is quite
well, okay, that's for a start. I would not go that far, but I just found it interesting.
Yeah, but it is fascinating, the stuff that sits underneath, as I say, our kind of core beliefs and why we sort of have a particular image of ourselves. It's really interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think kind of moving on from kind of the goal setting, a lot of people will set this up, but if our kind of sleep hygiene or if our kind of evening routines that can throw off our goal setting, because if you get kind of less sleep at night, the chances of you making poor decisions the next day are extremely high. So do you have any views? And I know you're not a sleep expert or anything like that, but from a psychology point of view, do you have any views or tips that people can implement to ensure that, you know, sleep is important, to ensure that they're achieving goals?
Yeah, I mean, I think, as I say, as you said, I'm not a sleep expert, but certainly, again, for me, it comes back to that thing about routine. And I think the temptation is, and particularly actually with a lot of athletes I'm speaking to at the moment, the temptation is, because there is probably less structure in the day, that people are staying up later at night, so they're sleeping in, they're more tired, and actually it's having a massive impact on their energy levels. Yeah. Because again, we sort of, as humans, we tend to need to follow our own kind of natural circadian rhythm.
Oh, and there we go.
I thought you'd like that. But if we get too much out of that, it can throw everything off. So again, for me, it's almost trying to stick as much as possible to a kind of a bedtime routine, so going to bed at the same time, even if you don't have to get up at a particular time, setting an alarm so that you're getting into that pattern, so you're getting a kind of good, solid, whatever it is you need, 7 to 9 hours sleep. This is just speaking from a personal point of view, a big factor on helping that for me is like mobile phones and screen time and all that kind of thing, which will be worse at the moment with people working from home. Yeah. So can you switch it off even an hour before you go to bed? I switch my phone off and actually leave it in a separate room. Which got an old school alarm clock, and that really helps me. And again, I think there's like research around even just having your mobile phone in the room with you, even if you're not looking at it or it's switched off, there's something that gets triggered in the brain that sort of has an impact on sleep quality, which I find fascinating.
It's all the dopamine responses that you get when you're scrolling. You get addicted. It's the same as anything else, whether it's alcohol, drugs, whatever it may be. It's the release of dopamine, and is exactly the same amount of dopamine released when you're scrolling through social media and Instagram and Facebook, whatever it may be, as the dopamine you would get if you were to see a puppy. And we all know what it's like. Yeah, it's wild. So the fact that your mobile phone is in the same room, for a lot of people, is down by the bedside table or other end of the room, you're still switched on to it. You're still wanting, right, okay, I know it's there. I could get up, I could maybe, and before you know it, you're scrolling for 20 minutes.
Exactly. A work email could be coming in. Absolutely.
And as soon as you go on, it basically blocks out because of the blue light from the phone, it blocks out the amount of melatonin that's released, and then plays havoc with kind of the amount of deep sleep that you get, which is what we need for restorative benefits.
Yeah.
So yeah, phones. The fact that you've even got an alarm is brilliant. Like old school.
It's like proper old school as well.
You put the bells on either end, or is it one of those? Brilliant.
It's amazing.
But it's good that we share the same views on that. And it was more from a psychology point of view. I just wanted to find out what your thoughts would be on it, about sleep as a whole for our mindset right now. And I definitely think it's something that a lot of people need to address, is to clean up it's the same as anything else. Hygiene is hygiene. So the neater that you can be within your evening routine, the more benefit that you're going to get the next day.
Yeah, exactly.
Spot on, Louise. So we're just going to wrap this up, guys. I'm going to get Louise to give you 3 nuggets or bombshells, whatever you want to call them, of information that you can action and implement straight away to clean up your potential sleep pattern, or it could be to clean up your anxiety around what's currently going on, about goal setting, mindset, whatever it may be in performance, sport, or business. Louise, go for it.
Okay, that's a lot.
Just three.
Just three. So one thing which actually we haven't probably touched on, which is, again, I don't want to sound too much like a cliche with it, but the whole thing about controlling the stuff that you can control.
I like that.
I think, and just to kind of touch, just to go, and I know I know you like the psychological theory behind stuff. I get as humans, to kind of take control of the situations we're in, there's 3 key elements. Something called self-determination theory, which is around autonomy. Mm-hmm. So that is like being able to control the controllables and being able to focus on the stuff that's within our control, and kind of letting go of the other stuff. And the other part of that is competence. So it's about how are we constantly developing ourselves, to whether that's to learn a new skill or learn something, growing mastery in something. And the other thing behind that is relatedness. So how can we connect to other people? How do we sort of feel that we're part of something? And I guess if you can keep those 3 things in mind, as we kind of go through this period of uncertainty, then that's something that will set you up. So if that is about a training goal, actually what's the skill you want to acquire? What's in your control to do about it? And how do you connect with other people to keep you motivated and accountable for it? So that's kind of one big thing.
I love that. It's brilliant.
The other thing which I've talked about, and I don't want to sound like a broken record, but routine and structure as much as you can. I think that's a huge thing at the moment. And then the third thing, I think, and it's something that I've been totally sort of honest about, it's something that I grapple with, which I grapple with, but let go of being perfect. Nothing about this time is going to be perfect, and we're all learning, we're all going to make mistakes as we go, and there's going to be lots of different challenges that come. So I think just be a bit nicer to yourself in amongst it all, because I think everyone is doing the best they can to kind of find their way through this, and it's not going to be perfect.
It's living with the acceptance of that, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I think that's what a lot of people struggle with, including myself. You want start now, perfect later. Yeah,
definitely.
I think that's it.
Yeah, that's it. That's done.
And in terms of so do you have your services, is it purely for businesses and sports teams, or do you open up to people who are looking to kind of, where can people find you? Can people work with you?
Yeah, absolutely. So my website, which is solasta.consulting. So easy for me to say, right?
I'll add that in the comments below, so you can click through to the link, guys.
Perfect. Or Twitter, which is _Lou24.
Okay.
Or actually on LinkedIn as well. So just find me on there.
Louise Finlayson. Perfect.
Yeah.
Well, Louise, thank you so much for taking the time out. I know you're absolutely slammed right now with work. It's been an absolute honor to have you chat to me. We've got a couple of things in common regarding this whole thing, which is brilliant. And guys, if anybody wants to reach out and chat to Louise personally, I'll add the comments, the notes, etc. into the comments below. But Louise, thank you so much. Have a fantastic day. Stay safe, most importantly, and keep doing what you're doing. To think what you're doing is absolutely incredible.
Thank you. No, it's been an absolute pleasure. So thank you for having me on. Enjoyed it.
No problem. We'll speak.
All right.
Chat soon.
All right. Thank you.